Hello guys, King of Trains here, and today I have the part 2 of the ideal New York City subway map series. Well, it's not really a series, this is just a two-part thing. But anyways, I've made a few changes since the last video on this, so I just wanted to go over them really fast. So in the last video I didn't have the T train on the map, but I've added this time from Hanover Square to 125th, joining with the Q. But one thing you'll notice here is that I've extended the Q train into the Bronx to replicate the old 3rd Avenue L service, since at the time the 3rd Avenue L was demolished, it still had very high ridership, and I feel like it was a real shame that the Transit Authority tore it down. But I feel like by adding the Q train there, it'll be useful for this middle area of the Bronx that doesn't have any rail lines. And I plan on having it go to Gun Hill Road and Webster Avenue, right up there, which I think is pretty convenient and cool. And then you have a transfer to the 2 and 5 as well as the 6 train. So let's say the 2 and 5 for whatever reason aren't running into Manhattan because of construction, weekend construction. You could take the Q train from 3rd Avenue, transfer to the 6 to get to Lexington. Or you could, I'll get into that later. Next, I've also extended the F train from Jamaica 179th Street east into Queens to Bella Rose Floral Park via Hillside Avenue. So it has about 6 new stops. 188th Street, Francis Lewis Boulevard, 212th Street, Braddock Avenue, Winchester Boulevard, and then Floral Park, Little Neck Parkway. So it's much closer to the border of Queens and Nassau County now, which I think is pretty good for the people living in this area of Queens who have to take a bus to the F train. That way they don't have to wait for the bus. And I've done something similar with the 7, because in the last video I had the 7 train going to the Bronx, but I have a separate train doing that now. So yeah, I have a new train running to the Bronx, so that way I could send the 7 train east to Little Neck instead of the Bronx and Bayside, which is pretty convenient in my opinion. So it has extra stops past Flushing Main Street, about 6 stops just like the F, at Parsons Boulevard, Murray Street, 167th, Francis Lewis Boulevard, Clearview Expressway, and lastly Bayside, 216th Street. So going into Brooklyn, I've extended the 2 and 5. In the last video, I explained how it would be cool to extend the 2 and 5 past Brooklyn College down Flatbush Avenue to go to Kings Plaza. But in this part 2, I've extended it 2 stops further to Marine Park and then Jacob Riis Beach. This may be more useful in the summer than the winter time, where if you have beachgoers in Brooklyn who want to get to the Rockaways but don't really want to go to Coney Island, they'd have another option, and don't really want to go in. They don't want to take the A. They just want a direct way to get to Far Rockaway. This would work. And I believe the Q35 that runs on Flatbush, I believe, takes you to Jacob Riis Beach. But I haven't taken that bus route before, so I don't know how useful or unuseful it is. So this one, it doesn't have to happen. It's up for grabs. Just an idea. And now for the 3 train, in the last video I had it extended via Elton Street to Gateway Center, but I felt like it didn't really make sense to extend it, so I cut it back to its normal terminal at New Lots. And for the northern terminal, in the last video I had it going via the 4 line on the abandoned Ninth Avenue L to Burnside Avenue. But I realized that wouldn't work because Yankee Stadium is kind of in the way. So I figured it could have maybe a 3-stop extension from 145th Street to Anderson Jerome, and it could terminate there. Since the stations, they still exist, they're just abandoned and in ruin, and I feel like it's kind of a waste in my opinion. It's a really cool area. And even if there's no demand for it, I think it would be pretty cool. And then you would also have a transfer to the B&D train right there, So, yeah, that'd be pretty convenient in and of itself to get the B&D from the 3 train. Next, the Staten Island Railway. In the last video, I had it going into Brooklyn to connect with the NNR. But since I have a new train connecting Staten Island to Brooklyn, I figured I could just cut it back to St. George and then they could transfer at Tompkinsonville. And for the Rockaway Beach branch, in the last video I had the R train going down there. But now I figured, you know what, I'm just going to send the R to Forest Hills and extend the G train to Rockaway Park. But I know the MTA is kind of against extending the G train past Court Square ever since 2001 when they were testing to see if it would run with the V well, which it didn't. I believe that they were at capacity. And I don't know if that was because of 3 trains terminating at Forest Hills at the same time or 3 trains running on the line. Because if it's the latter, then it probably wouldn't work. But if it's the first one where it's a terminating issue, then you could just send the G train to Rockaway Park so that way it's only the M and R terminating at Forest Hills. Because otherwise, if I sent the R train to Rockaway Park, then the E would have to run local to support the M, since the M doesn't run on Queens Boulevard during the weekends. And last but not least, the Quad-Boro Connector. So I've designated that as the P train. So yeah, I brought the P train into the New York City subway now. Thank you for the idea. So the idea is I'm going to have it run in Staten Island into Brooklyn under, I believe this is Bay Ridge Parkway, yeah. And then Kings Highway, Linden Boulevard, going to JFK Court, north on Francis Lewis Boulevard, connections to the F and 7, and then into the Bronx to connect with the 625 3rd Avenue subway and concourse. Now this is a huge stretch, and this will probably never happen, sadly, because the MTA likes to put all their eggs into Manhattan or things directly connected to Manhattan. So an outer borough connector isn't on their priority list right now, I believe. But I think especially this area of Queens, which I like to call the Boondocks, you don't have any trains running here, just a bunch of buses. This part of Queens would definitely appreciate a new subway line, in my opinion. You can disagree, but hey, a subway line over here would not hurt. And with the F and 7 extensions, you would have 2 connections right there to take you to either part of Queens. And then if you want to get to South Queens, this will take you down to JFK Airport. And then there's a transfer right here to the A train at Aqueduct and the Belt Parkway. So I think that'd be very useful. And then it'll take you down to the lower parts of Brooklyn. Like, I think this will be a pretty cool route. And it takes you to Staten Island. Like, you could transfer. Yeah, so I figured this route was pretty long. So what I did was I have an X train running local. I had to choose X because I couldn't think of any other letters that would work and people wouldn't get confused by it, because O and I could be confused with 0 and 1 respectively. So the X train I would plan on having run local from Bay Parkway to Springfield Park in Queens. So it's pretty much what the C train does for the A in this current time. So it's pretty much just a local P train. But of course, in this map, I have all C trains going to Lefferts, all A's to Far Rockaway, and then the G to Rockaway Park, so that wouldn't matter anymore. So yeah, that's pretty much all the changes since the last video. Everything else from the last video, well, actually, in regards to the E train being the Culver local, I wouldn't be able to send it via the Cranberry 2 because that's at capacity. So what would need to happen is I would have to send the E train via the F at West 4th Street to run via the Rutgers Tunnel instead, since the Cranberry Tunnel can't handle the A, C, and E train at the same time, unfortunately. So I would have to send the E train via the F. Yeah. Hopefully that isn't an issue at Broadway Lafayette with the E, F, and M all running on the same track. But that's only one stop, so it really depends. That's a 50-50. But other than that, that's it. This is my ideal New York City subway map. If you have any more ideas or suggestions, feel free to comment. I look at all of them. If you agree or disagree, let me know. That's all for today. I'll see you next time.